Anyway, Banshees of Inisherin is the movie. There'll be more in Take Two, but Mark has this to say.
Well, I feel that we'll be talking about this for a while because it's obviously a Best Picture contender. I loved it. I think it's a better movie than In Bruges, incidentally. I know people absolutely love and revere In Bruges, but I think this is on a different level. First thing I want to say is the point that you made about the about Mystère de
Walbourg.
So weirdly enough, although we saw the film completely separately, I had exactly the same reaction because Trier Bulgarka I was introduced to through Kate Bush, as I think many people will have done, and they will have known that 4AD album and possibly got to it through Kate Bush. So
also a passing reference, Andy Kershaw was a huge fan, and his show on Radio 1, he used to play a lot of it as well.
Okay. But so if you know that music and if you love it, of course you go, that's wow, and what a brilliantly sort of off-kilter choice. But here's what I think is important about that. I think that tells you right at the beginning that the film is not just about what the film is about. Because when I hear that music, I think of it as being transcendent and spiritual, and you're introduced to the island, but it's telling you that, okay, there's stuff that's happening on the ground, but there's something above it. So on the one level, the setup has got a kind of element of Father Ted to it, which is, remote rural community in which you have an older, sort of smarter guy who's kind of exasperated by the company of this younger, slightly foolish character with whom he loses patience. But that's just the beginning. Then what happens is it descends into, I just don't want, because when he first goes to his sister, he says, why won't he answer the door to me? And she says as a joke, well, perhaps he doesn't like you anymore. And then almost 5 minutes later, it's, I just don't like you anymore, as we heard in the clip. And it's suddenly a breakup. It's suddenly, and that moment that he talks about, when you see on Colin Farrell's face, this look of realisation that that's what's going on. And then the threat, which is almost like a fairy tale threat, which is, if you come and speak to me again, I will cut off one of your fingers. I cut off one of my fingers. And that made me think of things like that brilliant short movie, Vinyl Verti, Green Vinyl, or it made you think of like the Brothers Grimm. It's a kind of mythical thing. If you speak to me, I shall cut off one of my fingers, and I am a fiddle player. So that's the breakup thing, which is, when Barry Keoghan's character says, what is he, 12? Because it is a child, you're moping around like
exactly
a schoolboy.
Like that, yes.
But it's exactly like that. And yet, behind it is something more philosophical, which, again, you spoke about in the interview, which is that what's actually driving that is existential despair and the awareness of death. The reason that this has happened is that Brendan Gleeson's character, Colin, suddenly has become aware of his own mortality and is worried about being forgotten in death. He says at one point, nobody remembers Nice, but everyone knows the name of Mozart, to which Porrick brilliantly says, well, I don't. So that puts that theory to bed. But it's really about somebody being consumed by the vanity of despair, consumed by the realization that they are going to be obliterated and they're not leaving anything behind. And that obliterating despair, making them do the one thing they shouldn't do, which is turn their back on Nice, turn their back on the person who has always been seen as one of the good guys. And I do think there are the confessional scenes, which obviously are, they're comedic, but they're also actually getting to the heart of this. You yourself mentioned, how are you doing with the despair? How's that happening? That is at the heart of it. It is about somebody confronting their own mortality and obliteration and reacting to it with this completely absurd, I'm just going to do something that I will be remembered by, and therefore I will turn my back on everything else. However, what that doesn't capture is the first 35, 40 minutes of the film, I'll laugh out loud funny. I mean, I have not laughed in a cinema so much in a long time. And I was in cinema on my own with just me and the security guard, okay? And at the end of it, the security guard said, you really enjoyed that, didn't you? I said, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think the performances are great across the board. I think the performances are absolutely perfect. I think that Kerry Condon is fantastic as the smarter sister who Brendan Gleeson's character keeps saying to her, look, you understand this, because she does understand that, she's confined by the surroundings. There's at one moment when he says, I just don't have time for dullness in my life anymore. She says, you live on an island off the coast of Ireland. And Barry Keoghan, however, is just, he's such a remarkable actor. And there is this heartbreaking mirroring going on, that in the same way that Colin thinks that Porrick is too stupid for his time now, Porrick thinks that Dominic, the Barry Keoghan character, is the stupidest person on the island. And what we see tragically is that absolutely is not true. He is I mean, it's all there in the writing. It's all there, and he's the person who says, faint heart never. He's the person who's quoting those allusions. So, I think it's really funny. I think the use of music is really, really smart. I think it is about something very profound, which is the approach of death and the fear of obliteration. And I would say, excuse me for saying this, that is what The Exorcist is about. I think it is one of the funniest films I've seen in recent memory, and I loved your interview with Martin McDonagh, and I think it's just great.
And also,
it looks like a Vermeer.
amazing.
It looks like a Vermeer or a film made by Dreyer. And yeah, sorry.
The trailer is basically
Haven't seen
makes
the trailer.
you, well, it's got all the gags in it.
Is it? Okay.
So what you get, and it is that funny, but what you don't get is that heart of darkness, which is really very, very present. And as he said, it's very interesting. He didn't know what people were going to take away, but he said listening to people, what they've taken away is that sense of despair and melancholy. Whilst it is very funny. Plus, it mentioned in passing, this movie and Amsterdam have women smoking pipes in it, and it hasn't been reported.
And in this particular movie, the woman smoking a pipe is basically death.
She certainly looks like that.
She looks like she walked off the set of The Seventh Seal and went, I'll just take a seat here then.
Can you find me someone who looks like a witch, because they need to represent death? Anyway,
did you like it as much as I did?
I did once I had recovered from my
Melancholia.
Yes, exactly. Well, now that was a great video, I thought, wasn't
Couldn't
it?
take my eyes off it.
And neither could they.
Do you think they know that they can keep up to date with all things Kermode and Mayo's take by checking out our social channels?
Well, they do now.
Yes, they do.